Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Sharnaravind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Samavita Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 12, Text 38. Iti uttanapada putro. Iti uttanapada putro. Dhruvaha Krishna parayanaha. Dhruvaha Krishna parayanaha. Abhutrayanam lokanam. Abhutrayanam lokanam. Chudamanir ivamalaha. Chudamanir ivamalaha. Iti uttanapada putro. Dhruvaha Krishna parayanaha. Abhutrayanam lokanam. Chudamanir ivamalaha. Iti uttanapada putro. Dhruvaha Krishna parayanaha. Abhutrayanam lokanam. Chudamanir ivamalaha. iti. Thus, Uttanapadaha of Maharaj Uttanapad, Putraha, the son, Dhruvaha, Dhruva Maharaj, Krishna Parayanaha, fully Krishna conscious, Abhut, became, Trayanam, of the three, Lokanam, worlds, Chudamanihi, the summit jewel, Eva, like, Amalaha, purified. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. In this way, the fully Krishna conscious Dhruva Maharaj, the exalted son of Maharaj Uttanapad, attained the summit of the three statuses of planetary systems. Purport. The exact Sanskrit terminology for Krishna consciousness is here mentioned. Krishna Parayanaha. Parayanaha means going forward. Anyone who is going forward to the goal of Krishna is called Krishna Parayanaha, or fully Krishna conscious. The example of Dhruva Maharaj indicates that every Krishna conscious person can expect to reach the topmost summit of all three planetary systems within the universe. A Krishna conscious person can occupy an exalted position beyond the imagination of any ambitious materialist. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyavacha Patithanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you for coming for this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. A few days ago, when His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj was giving a class to some of us, he mentioned a nice point. He said that vigilance is the price that one has to pay for freedom. If you want to be free from the grip of the illusory energy, if you want to be free from the grip of Maya, then you have to pay the price of vigilance. That means that you always have to be on your toes to see how Maya is working, how your mind is working. If you just relax and you just let your desires come in and you just act on them, then you'll get caught and you'll get bound up by the illusory energy. Many times in Srimad Bhagavatam, the analogy is given of falling into a deep, dark well. If you fall into a deep, dark well, you can't get out, no matter what you do. You have to wait for the mercy to descend from a devotee. You have to wait for the mercy of Krishna to descend. There's very little that you can do. So we have to always depend on devotees' mercy. But we can avoid that by being vigilant in Krishna conscious. And we see that Dhruva Maharaj, he demonstrated this vigilance at least on 2 occasions. Of course, we don't know the entire story of Dhruva Maharaj, but some aspects of, some important aspects of Dhruva Maharaj's life are recounted in Srimad Bhagavatam. And vigilance means that we always choose the option which is favorable to our Krishna consciousness. This is what it means to be vigilant. We have to train our spiritual intelligence in such a way through cultivating transcendental knowledge, through digesting transcendental knowledge, so that when we are faced between a choice of Maya and Krishna, we have the strength to be able to choose Krishna. So we see that Dhruva Maharaj, he started off his penances with a purely materialistic desire of becoming a famous ruler. Right? Many devotees have been saying more famous than his grandfather and his great-grandfather. That was his ambition. He was not a devotee. He was not a yogi. He was not a jnani, nothing like that. He was just the son of a Kshatriya, and he had a tremendous ambition because he was being propelled by the mode of passion. And it was so much that it even surprised Narada Muni. He was surprised. How amazing are these Kshatriyas? A small 5-year-old boy like Dhruva Maharaj has such tremendous determination and ambition. He's going to the forest by himself and engaging in such tremendous tapasya. So when he did his tapasya, it took him how long to see Vishnu? No. We generally say 6 months, but Srimad Bhagavatam actually says he saw Vishnu in 5 months. In the 5th month, he saw Vishnu. And then he sees Prishnagarbha. And then he has an opportunity to ask for his material desire, for which he performed all this severe tapasya. But then what does he do? He says, Varam na yache. I don't want that actually. I actually want to become your pure devotee. I want to engage in your devotional service. So here's one example. Another example is when his brother Uttama dies in the forest, and then again, out of a materialistic, or let's say a desire based on the bodily conception of life, how can the yakshas kill my brother? He went into the forest and he waged war on the yakshas, killing thousands and thousands of them. And then Swayambhuva Manu, right? Swayambhuva Manu comes and he advises him to stop. What does he do? Does he listen? He listens. So this is another aspect. Dhruva Maharaj knows what is good for his Krishna consciousness, what is not good for his Krishna consciousness. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjita. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that these are the first two aspects of sharanagati, of surrender to Krishna. That we have to accept things which are favorable for our Krishna consciousness, and we have to have the strength and the intelligence through the cultivation of transcendental knowledge to be able to reject things which are unfavorable to our Krishna consciousness. My Guru Maharaj mentions that Krishna consciousness is lifestyle engineering. You have to be prepared to change the way you're living. You have to be prepared to change the way you dress, you think, you act, you feel, how you deal with other people. If you don't do that, you can't change. And all these things have an effect on your consciousness. That's why it's advised that even when we go to sleep at night, we should sleep in devotional clothing, at least in the brahmachari ashram here. All the brahmacharis, we sleep in dhoti and kurta, because just the clothing that you wear has an effect on how your mind thinks as well. If you wear karmi clothes, if you wear pant, t-shirt, then there is a tendency for the mind to think in that way as well, because those clothes are not transcendental. The clothes that we wear in the Krishna consciousness society, dhoti, kurta, sari, these are transcendental clothing. The residents of Vrindavan are wearing the same clothing in the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada has given us a whole package of culture to be able to mold our consciousness to be focused on Krishna. So we have to be able to change our lives, and this requires vigilance. And through this vigilance, Dhruva Maharaj has attained the perfection of life. Etavan sankhya yogabhyam swadharma parinishthaya janmalabha parapumsa ante narayana smriti. A human being's life is successful if that human being practices Krishna consciousness throughout his or her life, and at the end of their life, they are able to be conscious of Krishna. Now, what to speak of being conscious of Krishna? An airplane, a spiritual airplane, has descended from Vaikuntha to take Dhruva Maharaj back. The Vishnudutas, Nanda and Sunanda, have descended from the plane, and they're inviting Dhruva Maharaj to come up. It reminds me actually when I was young. I must have been 9 or 10 years old. And, in India, you have those TV serials like Om Namah Shivaya and Mahabharata, Ramayana and all that sort of stuff. So I grew up here in Australia. So obviously you can't watch those TV serials on TV because they don't broadcast it. So my parents used to go to, a local Indian spice store or something like that. And there they used to sell the DVDs. So they used to purchase like a whole set, the whole set of DVDs for a certain TV series. And they used to come back and they just used to watch DVD after DVD after. So I was just passing through the room and, I just used to peek and sometimes see what's going on. I wasn't too much interested, but I saw one time, I remember clearly, I saw one scene. It was in a serial, I don't know which one it was, but there was a hermitage, a gurukul, and there was a lot of sages and rishis there. And at one point in time, some bandits came into the gurukul, and they had bows and arrows, and they started to shoot these arrows at these rishis. And many of these rishis were, I don't know what pastime this is, but many of these rishis got shot in the chest by these arrows. And they were the typical rishis, big matted locks of black hair, the thing at the top knot at the top, and all that sort of stuff, and big thick Brahmin thread and dhoti they're wearing. And then just before they were about to die, each one of them, they would close their eyes and they would chant Om, Om, and then they would drop down dead. And I was thinking, what's going on here? Why is each one of these people dying like this? And it wasn't years later when I read Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram tam tam evati kontir sada tad bhavati. So Krishna mentions in the 8th chapter that according to your consciousness at the time of death, that determines your future birth in the mature world or back to the spiritual world. So these rishis were meditating on Krishna at the time of death, because Krishna mentions also in the Bhagavad Gita that he is Omkar. He is the sound vibration of Om as well. So then I realized. So Dhruva Maharaj is demonstrating to us the perfection of Krishna consciousness. He's showing us how we should live our life and how we should die, even at the moment of death. What is he doing? He's paying his obeisances and respects to all the rishis there as well. He doesn't want to leave this world with a heavy heart. He doesn't want to leave this world knowing that he may have offended a devotee. And similarly, we should not offend a devotee and leave these loose ends like that, because tomorrow if the devotee goes back to home, back to Godhead, we'll be in a situation where we never got to apologize to that devotee, and that will stay with us for our whole life. So Ganesham Prabhu, he often says that Vaishnavas are very intelligent. They solve the problem then and there. Never take your problem to the next day. We should approach Radha Gopinath just like little babies. They are our parents, our mother and father. So when we go and take darshan of them, we should just be like little toddlers, like 2 or 3-year-old babies, how they approach their parents. We should approach Radha Gopinath like that. And you'll see little kids, when they get into fights or arguments, they just settle it then and there. They don't take the issue to the next day. They don't hold grudges or anything like that. So we too as devotees should not take any issues to the next day. If we have to, many times in the ashram, I remember many times we have stayed up late at night, 11, 12, 1 o'clock. If there was any issue between devotees or anything like that, we've stayed up and we've talked, we've discussed, and we would not sleep until the issue was resolved. So that's an important lesson that we can learn as devotees. And Dhruva Maharaj is making sure that before he parts from this mature world, that there's no issue between him and the residents of this mature world. He steps on the head of death, which shows that he has conquered death. Vaishnavas, they live to die. And while living, they spread the glories of the holy name around. So, Dhruva Maharaj is exemplifying this. Now, this particular verse, it's saying Krishna Parayana. There's another way that Srila Prabhupada paraphrases this. Do you know what it is? Something Parayana. Yeah, so I believe there's another verse in Bhagavatam which mentions Narayana Parayana as well. But in any case, Srila Prabhupada says that Parayana means to go forward. Whether it's Narayan Parayana or Krishna Parayana, it means that we should be taking steps every single day to go towards Krishna. Now, when I read that purport, I was reminded of a very famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the 3rd canto, chapter 29, chapter 25 of the 3rd canto, text number 29. And a very nice analogy is given of Bhakti Yoga. Yo yogo bhagavad bhano nirvanat mamsh tvayoditaha kidrisha kati changani yatas tattva vabodhanam. I'll read the translation. This mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, when we say mystic yoga system, what type of yoga system do you think of usually? Yes? What are the yoga systems which are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita? What type of yoga systems that does Krishna talk about in the Bhagavad Gita? Ashtanga yoga? Hatha yoga, you can say, is the same as Ashtanga yoga. What is the name of Ashtanga yoga in the Bhagavad Gita? What name is it given? In chapter 6. What is the name of title of chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita? Anyone know? Dhyan yoga. Dhyan yoga, which is the meditative yoga. Okay? And it's synonymous with Ashtanga yoga. What other types of yoga are there? Karma and Bhakti. So these are the 4 yoga systems that Krishna speaks about in the Bhagavad Gita. And the whole point is that at the end he establishes Bhakti Yoga as the supreme yoga system. In fact, all other yoga systems are geared towards attaining Bhakti. If you're practicing Karma or Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, you've not perfected your yoga practice. Why is that? What is the perfection of Jnana Yoga? Sorry, Madhuri. And what happens, finally what happens to the Jnana Yogi when he or she is liberated? Okay, so they realize Brahman, they realize that the absolute truth is not a person, is not Paramatma, but it's an impersonal energy, spiritual energy, not material, spiritual energy. And our existence, our consciousness merges into Brahman. Perfection of Ashtanga, Paramatma realization, right? We realize that Krishna is located within the hearts of every single living entity. So it's the realization of the localized aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then finally, Bhakti is, we realize that Krishna is Bhagavan. So when it says here that the mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what yoga system is being mentioned here? Gyan, Bhakti or Bhakti? Right? So Bhakti. So continue reading the translation. The mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is meant for completely ending material existence. Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. How many ways are there by which one can understand, in truth, that sublime yoga? Now, the word used in Sanskrit in this verse is Bhagavat Ban. So for those of you who know maybe Hindi, Sanskrit, Ban means bow, arrow. Bow or arrow? Bow. Ban means bow. So, Bhakti Yoga is compared to be like a bow, and we are shooting our consciousness, which is the arrow, at Krishna. So the target is Krishna, the arrow represents our consciousness, and the bow is the system of Bhakti Yoga, which consists of Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Anartha Nivriti, all these stages, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivriti, all these stages. So it's a very nice analogy. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, he says, another word in this verse, Bhagavat Bana, which means the bow of Krishna consciousness, is very significant. Prabhupada here is saying Bana means arrow.
The Bhakti Yoga system is just like an arrow aiming up to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhakti Yoga system never urges one towards the impersonal Brahman effulgence or to the point of Paramatma realization. So Bhakti Yoga is completely separate and exclusive from Gyan Yoga, which helps us to realize Brahman, and Mystic Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, through which we realize Paramatma. This bana or arrow is so sharp and swift that it goes directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, penetrating the regions of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. So not only is the arrow of Krishna consciousness, the bow of Krishna consciousness, so powerful that we can pierce through the understanding of Brahman and Paramatma, but here in today's verse, it's mentioning that Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Uttanapad, attained the summit of the three statuses of the planetary systems. What are the three planetary systems in the universe? Lower planetary systems, the middle planetary systems, and the upper planetary systems. Upper planetary systems are like the heavenly planets, right? And then the planets above the heavenly planets, Mahar, Janas, Tapa, and Satyalok. The middle planetary system is Bhumandala, yes, where we are situated, Bhumandala, the disk, where at the center Mount Meru is there, and you have the 7 islands and the 7 concentric oceans. That's Bhumandala. And then the lower planetary systems, which are the hellish planets, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatal, Rasatal, Mahatal, Patal. He pierced through these different statuses of the material universe, and he pierced the shell of the material universe, and he attained the spiritual world. Well, actually, he entered the spiritual world within the material universe. But the idea is that if we practice Krishna consciousness, we can pierce through the covering also, not only a philosophical understanding of Paramatma realization, Brahman realization, and reaching Bhagavan realization, but we can physically pierce through the shell of the material universe and enter into Vaikuntha. So Krishna Parayana, moving forward. So Srila Prabhupada has appropriately named this Krishna Consciousness Society as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. And many times devotees make the point that it means we have to move. It's not a stagnation of Krishna consciousness where we just relax and, yeah, I've made it to bhakti now. I'm chanting my rounds, I'm following the principles, I'm doing a bit of service, I'll just relax now. The material energy doesn't work like that. Maya doesn't work like that. And whenever I think of this particular example, I always get reminded, again, back to my childhood, when there was these gaming consoles. I'm not sure if any of you will know, but Sega Mega Drives or Nintendo Master Systems. There was these really old school gaming systems. Nowadays, all the games are like all 3D. The characters can move around in an environment. Before, it was just 2D. And I remember a game called Sonic the Hedgehog. And it was a little hedgehog, and you just press the forward button, and he just moves along the screen, and you got to make him jump and all that sort of stuff through different obstacles. And sometimes in some of those levels, the screen would move as well. So you have to move your character along the screen, and the screen itself would move. And if you didn't move, if your character hit the screen as the screen moved forward, you'd die. So you have to keep moving forward. So Krishna consciousness is like that. We have to keep moving forward. And how do we do that? By training the mind. There's a very nice analogy which Srimad Bhagavatam gives in relation to the mind. And that analogy is that of a hunter. So a hunter goes into the forest and he'll capture animals. Sometimes he'll kill them, sometimes he'll capture them alive, and he'll put them in the cage. And the hunter always remains skeptical of the animals, because if he puts faith in the animals, what's going to happen? They'll escape. They'll escape. So we have to similarly be very, very skeptical of our mind, because currently Bhagavad Gita says, Krishna says that our mind is diseased. What is it diseased by? What is the disease? Yeah, but what is it called? What does Krishna say in the 3rd chapter is the eternal enemy of the conditioned soul? Nitya Vairanam. Lust. Lust means to use our senses for our own sense gratification, instead of using our senses to please Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita clearly says that if we use our senses to please Krishna, that is called love. And if we use our senses to please ourselves, Atmendriya Priti Vancha, Bali Tare Kam, that is known as lust. So my Guru Maharaj mentions that we should have a jousting spirit with Maya. I don't know if you know the sport called jousting. It's a medieval sport that they used to have in Europe. So two knights, basically two soldiers, they would come with armor. They would wear metal armor and metal helmets, and they would ride on horses towards each other like this. There'd be a long barrier in the middle. There'll be one horse on one side of the barrier, on one opposite end. On the other opposite end, on the other side of the barrier, there'll be another horse with another warrior on top of that horse. And each one of these knights or warriors, they'll have this long wooden stick. Long, like 5-6 meters long. And they would both charge each other on either side of that wooden barrier, and they'll try to basically pike each other with that wooden barrier and make them fall off. So my Guru Maharaj mentions we should have that chivalrous jousting spirit with Maya. If Maya throws a punch at us, what do? We should have the strength to throw a punch back at Maya. Now, can we throw a punch back at Maya? No, we can't. So we have to take shelter of Krishna through the holy name. And that's what Krishna says. One who takes shelter of me is able to overcome Maya. So every morning we are standing here just after Guru Puja and we are singing Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. What does it mean? What does it mean, Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam? Yeah. We have to experience victory by engaging ourselves in Krishna's Sankirtan movement. That's what it means. So each one of us needs to have our personal experience of what it feels like to overcome the influence of Maya by taking shelter of Krishna. This is a very, very important point that all devotees need to experience. When you're being harassed by the material energy, when your past desires are pushing you to do something and you know it's not good for your Krishna consciousness, instead of helplessly just saying, oh, let me just give in to it, oh well, what can I do? I'm hopeless, I'm useless, I'm insignificant, the material energy, my desires are too strong. At that particular time, if we have the strength to joust with Maya, to take shelter of Krishna, and chant, and here, my Guru Maharaj mentions, he says, oh yeah, Maya, you're going to throw a punch back at me? Well, take this punch. I'm just going to put my hand in my bead bag, and I'm just going to keep chanting, and 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 there's nothing that you can do about it. So we need to have that attitude with Maya, right? And then, you'll see, he was saying that, and then when you try to fight back against Maya, Maya will be like, hey, you're not a pure devotee, what are you trying to do? And she'll try to still linger around, hey, come on, I'm still here. You can't get rid of me. Or even if you tolerate me now, I'll come back in the future with material desires. But each time we have to take shelter, more and more and more. So therefore it's mentioned that for a materialist, the influence of Maya is a source of falling down further into the material energy. But for a devotee who has their bow and arrow fixed at the target, which is Krishna, Maya serves as an impetus. Maya serves as a catalyst to run towards Krishna faster. And by doing this, we become a Jivan Mukta. Ihayasya haridasya karmana manasagira nikhilaswapya avastasu Jivan Mukta suchate. What does it mean, Jivan Mukta? It's a very popular term which is thrown around. Mukta means liberation. What does Jivan Mukta mean? Speak up. Yeah. So one who is liberated while still living in their material body is a Jivan Mukta. And Dhruva Maharaj is an example of that. Now I found something very interesting in Srimad Bhagavatam, hidden within the purports of Srila Prabhupada. This is from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, text 5. Srila Prabhupada says, he quotes the eight symptoms of a Jivan Mukta. Srila Veera Raghava Acharya, one of our acharyas, states that in the Chandogya Upanishad, there are 8 symptoms of a Jivan Mukta. So symptom number 1 is called apahata. Apahata papa. That's the first symptom. He is free from all sinful activity. So Krishna mentions in the Gita that the thing which stops us from having drida vrat, which means firm determination in Krishna consciousness, is our past sinful reactions. They keep disturbing our mind. Time and time again, they keep disturbing our mind. And that stops us from having full concentration and focus in Krishna consciousness. So there's many different ways in Krishna consciousness that we can get rid of these previous sinful reactions. I was just reading recently, the Ekadashi that came, it was Uttana Ekadashi. It was the last Ekadashi in the month of Kartik, a very powerful Ekadashi. And if you read, I'm just giving this as an example, okay? So if you read the Ekadashi Mahatmya, there it was mentioned, specifically in regards to this Ekadashi, and you can apply the general rule for all Ekadashis, that if one had fasted for half a day, completely from water, nirjal, and from food, and broken his fast at lunch, and just taken one meal during that day. So you fast breakfast, morning, and then you break your fast at midday. Then all your sinful reactions from your previous life are annihilated. That's how powerful this Ekadashi is. And it's said further that if you fast in the morning, and if you fast at lunch as well, and then you break your fast by eating Ekadashi Prasad in the evening, then you would have destroyed your sinful reactions from your previous 2 births. If you fasted the whole day, so from sunrise on the day of Ekadashi to the sunrise of Dwadashi the next day, you would burn your sinful reactions from your past 100 births. And then it mentioned, and this is very difficult, that if you performed Jagran, which means that if you stayed awake the whole night during Ekadashi and chanted and read Bhagavatam, then you would destroy all your sinful reactions from your previous 1,000 births. So that's just one example of how powerful Ekadashi is. Now, obviously, Srila Prabhupada's mood was preaching. So Srila Prabhupada always emphasized that if your personal austerities are going to get in the way of your preaching, whether it's distributing books or whatever it may be, then that takes priority. But if we can do both, or at least as much as possible in terms of doing some austerities, it'll help us, as long as we don't compromise on the preaching. And that's the power of an Ekadashi fast. It's mentioned in the Shastra that if one fasts on Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna, that fast is 1,000 times more powerful than an Ekadashi fast. I'll give you another example, something I came across, a reference that I came across in Padma Puran. You know how every morning when we do Tulsi Arti, so after we sing Tulsi Arti, what do? We all walk around Tulsi Marni and then we water Tulsi Marni. And you'll notice that some devotees, after watering Tulsi Marni, they'll just lightly touch the soil and put it on their head. Do you know why we do that? Why? Blessings? Yes, blessings. But what is the result of that blessings? Do you know? When we do that, what happens to us? Yes, we get bhakti. It's mentioned in the Puranas, just by taking darshan of Tulsi, just by seeing Tulsi Marni, all one's sins are eradicated. So yes, that is there. But specifically what it says in the Padma Puran is that if you perform any devotional activities with even some microparticles of the dust of Tulsi Marni on your head, then whatever devotional activities you perform, it gets multiplied by 100 times. That means that if you have a little dust of Tulsi Mala on your head, if you chant 1 round, you get the benefit, the spiritual credits of chanting 100 rounds. So, our Shastras have given us some hacks. Our Shastras have given us some cheap processes by which we can advance in Krishna consciousness by leaps and bounds. If only we study Srila Prabhupada's books, if we study the Shastras, we can understand this. And then Krishna consciousness doesn't become a ritual, right? We have an explanation as to why we do each one of these things. So, the first quality is apahata papa. A Jivan Mukta, a pure devotee of Krishna, is free from all sinful activity. Vijara, actually. He's not subjected to the miseries of old age. Many times when Srila Prabhupada used to travel, he used to have interviews with, old priests, elderly priests, and different religious leaders, and they would remark to Srila Prabhupada, your disciples, they have a very bright glow to their faces. Many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, during Prabhupada's appearance day, they glorify Srila Prabhupada as having a very bright effulgence as well. A golden colored hue, very bright skin, like that. So you'll see that Srila Prabhupada, although materially he was old, he was able to attract hippies and, kids in their 20s. Have you seen such a thing happen ordinarily in the mature world, where someone in their 70s was able to be like an idol for people in their 20s? I've never seen it. So that's because materially the body ages, but spiritually the pure devotee always remains young, because they're identifying with their spirit soul. They're not identifying with the body. Vimrityu. A liberated person prepares himself in such a way that he does not have to take any material bodies in the future which are destined to die. Another thing my Guru Maharaj says is that we should practice Krishna consciousness in this lifetime so that we don't have any regrets at the time of death. Just imagine you're just lying on your deathbed. That could be now, it could be a few days from now, it could be 50 years from now, we don't know. Now just imagine something happens and you're lying on your deathbed, you don't have too long to live, and then you have regrets on your mind. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done this. I should have been more serious there. So we should practice our Krishna consciousness right now while we have the chance, while we have the opportunity, so that when that time comes, we don't have any regrets. Vishoka. He is callous to all material distress and happiness. It's mentioned in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that one of the qualifications for liberation is that we should not get affected by the dualities of material nature. What is that? Yehi samsparsha. No, what is it? 2.14. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agamapayanotyas tam stitikshasva bharata. Krishna advises that we should tolerate titikshava. The 5th quality is vijiga hatsa, which indicates that he no longer has desires for material enjoyment. So the seed for performing fruitive activity is completely burnt from his heart. The 6th quality, apipata, which means that he has no desire other than to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, his dearmost Lord. 7, satyakama, which indicates that all his desires are directed to the supreme truth, Krishna. It doesn't mean that a Jivan Mukta has no desires. You can't get rid of desires, but you have to change the quality of your desires from material to spiritual. And finally, the last quality of a Jivan Mukta is called Satya Sankalpa, which means whatever he desires is fulfilled by the grace of Krishna. Why do you think Krishna fulfills the desires of a pure devotee? And maybe he's not fulfilling our desires. It's because a pure devotee desires for Krishna. A pure devotee has no material attractions, and therefore even if Krishna gives him material facility, he's not going to get distracted by it. It's not an impediment. It's not an obstacle for him. So just like Dhruva Maharaj, he was given full material facility to rule as a great king, because when he had the chance to ask for a kingdom, he didn't ask for it. So that was his qualification to become a great ruler. a great Vaishnava ruler. So Krishna readily fulfills the desires of his pure devotees because they desire only Krishna and Krishna's interests. So I just want to finish this class today by reading something about our dearmost Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. This is actually from Leelamrit. How many of you have read Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrit? You've read Prabhu? Yeah? Anyone else? Yes? It's a very beautiful book written by Satswarup Das Goswami Maharaj, one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. It's a book that if you start reading it, you won't put it down. If you read this book, your attraction and your appreciation for Srila Prabhupada will increase by leaps and bounds. Very beautiful book about the whole life history of Srila Prabhupada, all the struggles he went through, all of his achievements, even before when he was young, how his life was and how he started the Krishna consciousness movement. Everything is given there in great detail. So this part is from Leelamrit, where Srila Prabhupada is bringing Radha Gopinath to Sydney. Now it says here that Srila Prabhupada had his reasons for bringing Radha and Krishna to Australia. So when it says Radha and Krishna, it's referring to Radha Gopinath. Some of these reasons were apparent, and others were so deep that only he and Radha and Krishna could understand them. Pretty significant. Of course, he was always expanding his movement, of which deity worship was an important part. So that was one reason for bringing Radha and Krishna to Australia, to strengthen the devotees and establish more solidly his movement there. And look what it says. And Prabhupada loved these deities. Maharaj is writing that Srila Prabhupada loved Radha Gopinath specifically. They had presided over the Bombay Pandal program. That was a program which went for about 10 days or something, and every single day 30,000 people would come to take darshan every single day of Radha Gopinath. So sometimes devotees say that, hey, we're building a new temple, let's get some new deities, let's get some bigger deities. But let's not forget that 30,000 people used to come every single day to see Radha Gopinath. Radha Gopinath is very powerful. There are very few temples left in ISKCON throughout the whole world where Srila Prabhupada himself installed the deities. Right? You have Rukmini Dwarkadish in Los Angeles. You have Radha Kalachandji in Dallas, Texas. You have our Radha Gopinath. You have Radha Giridhari in Auckland. Then in Melbourne, you have Mahaprabhu. You have Radha Landanishwar in London. You have Radha Parishishwar in Paris. In India, you have Radha Madhav. In Mayapur, in Vrindavan, you have Radha Shyam Sundar. And I can't think of many more. There's probably some more, 5 or 10 more. But nowadays, we have more than 600 centers in ISKCON and temples. So there's at least that many deities, whether they're Gaur Nitai or Jagannath Baladev Subhadra or Radha Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada has only established and installed personally very few compared to the 600 ISKCON establishments that we have worldwide now. So Radha Gopinath is very, very dear to us. And they are irreplaceable. They're very merciful. They had presided over the Bombay Pandal, and when they hadn't been on stage, here's something interesting, he had kept them in his personal room. So when they weren't on stage, Prabhupada had kept Radha Gopinath in his personal room, where he could look at them during the day. So Prabhupada would indulge in taking darshan of Radha Gopinath throughout the day when he was in his room in Bombay. He had brought them from Bombay to Malaysia, to Sydney, and now he proposed to install them in this fledgling ISKCON center, ISKCON Sydney. But the infinite purity of his heart and the depth of his determination to risk anything for their lordships, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, are unfathomable. Srila Prabhupada's activities are most grave, and their deeper meaning eludes an observer. Of Lord Chaitanya, Krishnadas Kaviraj wrote, I do not know the deep meaning of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities. I'm just trying to describe them externally. When Prabhupada came to the temple to perform the initiation ceremony and deity installation, the devotees weren't ready. Only one small vase of flowers decorated the almost bare altar, and the devotees had not made garlands for the deities. Prabhupada was displeased. The small temple was packed, however, and guests and devotees crowded the open doorway and peered through the front window. TV crews filmed the action under the hot lamps. When Gopinath was installed, all the media was here as well. While devotees hurriedly strung garlands for the deities, Prabhupada performed the initiation ceremony, where 15 initiates got initiated. To some devotees, he gave first initiation, and to some, he gave second initiation, and to others, both first and second initiation. Then he lovingly bathed the forms of Radha and Krishna and performed the fire sacrifice. While dressing the deities, he remarked that their clothes had been poorly made and that the devotees should make new ones immediately. He named the deities Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. And then if you keep reading this chapter, it explains how Srila Prabhupada, before he left Sydney, how he went to Radha Gopinath and he personally begged and prayed to them to take care of these mlechas, to take care of these meat eaters. I have to leave now. I have to continue on traveling around the world. So you please guide them how to serve you nicely in Krishna consciousness. So Radha Gopinath is extremely, no words can describe, very, very merciful and very, very dear to us, and no one can replace them. And we are very, very fortunate, whether we realize it or not, but we are extremely, fortunate to be here in Sydney under the shelter of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath and their devotees. So I'll finish here. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I'll take one question if there is any. My understanding is that it reverts. It's a verb. It reverts to actually physically traveling and moving towards. I'm not sure if those are synonyms for it, like meditating and all that sort of stuff. But from reading Prabhupada's purports, parayana means to walk towards or to be on the path of. That attachment is not ordinary because she's a devotee. His mother is his guru. His mother is his Vartamana Pradakshika guru. Why is he attached to her? Why is he not attached to his father? He's attached to his mother because he appreciates that his mother first instructed him to become Krishna conscious. So his attachment to his mother is attachment to a devotee, a Vaishnava, and that is perfectly favorable and legitimate. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.